They opened the clubhouse door and rain spilled onto the concrete floor. A barefoot girl stood in the doorway, shaking from the cold, with mud on her legs and a split lip that kept bleeding. He took her, she said, barely loud enough to hear. The laughter inside the room stopped at once. The biggest man at the table stood up, walked over, and knelt in front of her so he could see her eyes. Took who, he asked. Me mom, the girl answered. How long ago, tonight. He glanced past her at the motorcycles lined up outside under the parking lot lights. Where, East Farm Road, she said. Be the red gate. Everyone in the room knew that road, and nobody liked what usually happened out there after dark. Engines started within minutes. No one argued about calling the police, and nobody wasted time on questions that could wait. Someone wrapped the girl in a blanket and guided her into the back of an old pickup while rain hammered the pavement and headlights cut through the night. The man leading them was named Marcus. In town, people crossed the street when they saw the patch on his vest, locked their doors, and whispered behind curtains. They did not know him personally, but they knew the rumors. The red gate appeared ahead, bent and hanging open at the end of a muddy track. Marcus raised his fist and the engines shut down together. A barn glowed near the tree line, and a pickup sat crooked beside it. Fresh tire tracks were pressed deep into the soil, and Marcus crouched to examine dragged footprints that were too small to belong to an adult. Otwo inside, one rider muttered. Maybe 3. Marcus nodded. Equiet, he said, and spread them out. One man moved along the side wall, another slipped behind the barn, and a third climbed onto the porch roof. Marcus walked straight to the front door and kicked it open without warning. Shouting exploded inside. Furniture crashed. Someone ran down a hallway. Marcus grabbed the first man he saw and drove him into the wall while others intercepted a second figure near the back door. The struggle was short and violent, but controlled, with no speeches and no wasted threats. A muffled scream echoed from the kitchen. Marcus followed it and found a woman tied to a chair, bruised and shaking, with fear carved into her face. He cut the rope and told her she was safe, even though she stared at him like she could not believe a word. Only when she noticed the patches on the vests behind him did she flinch. Marcus lifted his hands. Your daughter s at the clubhouse, he said. Came for help. Her breath broke. Alina, she whispered. Outside, she froze at the sight of the motorcycles lined up in the rain. Someone draped a jacket around her shoulders and pressed water into her hands. No one crowded her, and nobody stared. When she saw her daughter climbing out of the pickup, she ran. The engines stayed silent while they held each other and cried, and the men turned away to give them privacy. They returned to the clubhouse before dawn. Boots were rinsed, bikes were parked back in line, and coffee went cold in paper cups. Marcus sat near the door because nights like that had a habit of bringing more trouble before they were finished. Headlights swept across the gravel just after sunrise. A battered sedan skidded to a stop and a man ran out yelling for help. He said his brother had been dragged off the highway by men in a black truck, and his sister-in-law had fled into the fields to call for police. Marcus listened, asked for the mile marker, and nodded once. Mount up, he said. They split into small groups and followed service roads beyond the highway until Marcus spotted torn gravel near a quarry road. Something heavy had been dragged toward a collapsed shed by the trees. They killed the engines and moved in on foot. Voices argued inside. Metal scraped. Someone cursed. Marcus kicked the door open. Two men froze while a third lunged for a rifle leaning against the wall. He never reached it. One rider tackled him while another tore the weapon away. The others went down seconds later. The man from the highway lay on the floor with blood on his forehead, but breathing. Marcus cut him loose. €1 owe you €1 re going home, €1 he said. Sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus waved his crew into the fields, and they vanished before police lights reached the trees. By the time the sun rose fully, the rescued man was wrapped in a blanket beside a patrol car. No names were given, and no statements were made. That night another knock came. A woman half-dragged a teenage boy inside with blood running down his scalp. 3 men had jumped him near the depot and left him in the rain. Towels appeared, water followed, and somebody taped gauze to his head. The boy kept asking if he was going to die. Marcus told him to breathe and sit still, and promised nobody was dying tonight. When paramedics arrived, the kid was cracking weak jokes about motorcycles, more shocked than hurt. The clubhouse went quiet again, but not for long. After midnight an old man arrived with shaking hands and truck keys clenched in his fist. He said his 14-year-old son had not come home, and the last place anyone saw him was the abandoned mill by the river. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. He did not ask why the police had not found the boy yet. He only nodded. €1 o mount up, €1 he said. The mill smelled of rust and wet timber. A van sat inside the loading bay with the hood still warm. Tracks led into the trees, and firelight flickered ahead. 2 men stood near the flames, and between them sat a boy tied to a post. Marcus charged through the brush. 1 man ran and was tackled almost instantly. The other froze under half a dozen flashlights. Marcus cut the rope and wrapped his jacket around the boy. €1 owe you €1 re safe, €1 Marcus said, again and again, until the boy nodded. Police arrived soon after. Marcus waited with his hands visible. An officer stared at the patches on his vest, then at the shaking kid behind him. €1 oho called this in, €1 the officer asked. Marcus shrugged. €1 deserved to go home. €1. The officer studied him for a long moment, then looked away and started talking to the boy €1 as father. Marcus turned back toward the tree line, already done. The town started to change in small ways. Kids waved when bikes passed, and a few shop owners left coffee on the clubhouse steps. People still whispered, but the whisper had less fear in it. Marcus did not enjoy any of it. He had seen praise turn into blame too many times, and he kept watching the door. That night, the black truck returned. They saw it first as headlights parked down the road, far enough to hide and close enough to watch. Marcus shut off the clubhouse lights and told everyone to stay inside. Minutes passed, and then a rock smashed one of the front windows. Glass scattered across the floor, and someone outside shouted, €1 oh you think you €1 re heroes now, €1. A match struck and fuel splashed against the wall near a trash bin. Flames climbed fast, and smoke curled under the eaves. Marcus moved immediately, and 2 riders emptied extinguishers into the fire until it died with a hiss. The truck peeled away into the dark before anyone could get a plate number. Marcus did not chase it. He wanted proof, not a street war. The next morning, Lena Euro's mother returned pale and trembling. She said the same truck had followed her halfway home and then turned off at the last second. Marcus felt the room tighten. €1 with €1 re looking for loose ends, €1 one rider said. €1 then we stop being loose, €1 Marcus answered. He spent the day collecting facts, not rage. He gathered case numbers from the farm, the mill, and the highway, and he wrote down every detail that could tie the men together. That evening he called the detective in charge and offered what he had, but only if the police moved fast. €1 LL testify, €1 Marcus said, €1 if you win this tonight. €1. After a long pause, the detective told him to stay where he was. An hour later, unmarked cars and cruisers surrounded the lot, silent and ready. The black truck rolled in like it owned the road, then tried to reverse when it saw the lights. It was boxed in within seconds. Men were pulled out, cuffed, and pinned to the gravel while they yelled and threatened. The detective walked up to Marcus afterward, tired eyes under a wet cap. €1 you gave me a clean chain, €1 he said. €1 we know we can finish it. €1. Marcus nodded once. He cared about one thing only, that Lena Euro's mother could sleep without headlights in her mirror. 2 weeks later, the warehouse by the riverfront caught fire. Smoke rolled across the docks while sirens wailed. Marcus heard the radio chatter through a scanner and grabbed his helmet before anyone asked. When they arrived, flames were licking up a loading ramp, and someone screamed that 2 workers were still inside. Marcus did not slow down. He and 2 riders ran in through a side door while heat peeled paint from the walls. They followed coughing voices through darkness that tasted like chemicals. They dragged one man out, then turned back for the second, because they could still hear him. A beam collapsed behind them and sparks sprayed. One rider slipped, hit his shoulder hard, and still got up. They found the second worker pinned by fallen shelving. Marcus and the other rider lifted, shifting the weight just enough to pull the man free. They half-carried him through smoke until they burst outside into cold air and chaos. Firefighters reached them seconds later. Marcus handed the injured man to a medic and stepped back, not waiting for praise. The medic looked at the patches and then looked at Marcus. €1 thank you, €1 she said. Marcus nodded once and walked away. After that, the town changed faster. A diner owner put up a sign that read "Coffee on the house," and everyone knew who it was for. A teacher organized a small donation drive at the school, and children carried blankets to the shelter with serious faces, like they finally understood what danger looked like. Lena and her mother came back to the clubhouse with pastries again. Lena stood awkwardly, then held out a folded piece of paper. Marcus took it, surprised. Inside was a drawing of a motorcycle with a small crown above it. Underneath, in uneven handwriting, were 4 words. "Thank you for the door." Marcus folded it carefully and put it in his wallet like it weighed more than money. Spring storms arrived, and then the river rose. It crept over its banks and then jumped them. Streets disappeared overnight. Cars stalled halfway underwater. Basements filled faster than families could carry things upstairs. Marcus woke to emergency alerts and thunder shaking the windows. He did not wait. Engines roared. Bikes went first, scouting flooded blocks while trucks hauled boats behind them. They pulled families from second-floor windows, carried elderly neighbors through freezing water, and ferried kids wrapped in towels across streets that looked like canals. They worked for hours without stopping. One rider cracked a rib on a staircase but waved off help and kept moving. Another dove into brown water to cut a trapped dog free from a fence. Marcus spent the night chest deep, shouting directions and hauling people onto improvised rafts. At dawn they heard screaming near the bridge apartments. Water was pouring through a stairwell. A father was yelling that his children were trapped on the 3rd floor. Marcus smashed a window and climbed inside. The hallway stank of sewage and wet plaster. The building creaked like it might shift. He found the kids in a bedroom, both crying, both shaking, and he carried them out one at a time, because the water was climbing fast. Outside, he handed the children to their father and turned back, because he could still hear another voice inside the building. A grandmother was calling from behind a door that would not open. Marcus kicked the door until the frame gave, then lifted her onto his shoulder and carried her down through water that was now at his waist. When they reached the street, a boat took her to safety. A little later, a school bus sat stalled at the edge of the floodplain, half tilted into a ditch. Water surged around its wheels, and the driver stood on the steps yelling for help while children cried inside. Marcus and 2 riders waded toward it, gripping each €1's sleeves so the current would not separate them. Marcus smashed the emergency window with a wrench, climbed in, and started passing kids out one by one, keeping his voice steady even as the bus rocked. The water kept rising, and the bus shifted with a grinding sound that made every adult freeze. Marcus told the driver to climb out next, but the man refused until the last child was out. Marcus respected that, but he did not waste time arguing. He lifted the final kid through the window, then grabbed the driver by the collar and pulled him after. When they stepped back into the current, the river hit them hard, and one rider nearly lost his footing. Marcus locked an arm around the rider's vest and pushed them toward higher ground, moving in short, controlled steps. Behind them, the bus finally slid another foot into the ditch, and everyone understood how close it had been. On the bank, the children coughed and cried and shook, but they were alive. A mother ran up screaming a name, then collapsed to her knees when she saw her son. Marcus turned away before anyone could thank him. By the time the rain finally slowed, the high school gym had become a shelter packed with cots, blankets, and exhausted families. Coffee steamed in huge metal urns. Volunteers moved between rows handing out dry socks and soup. A reporter tried to corner Marcus near the door. He shook his head. No interviews, he said. But people want to know who you are, the reporter insisted. Marcus looked around at wet jackets hanging over chairs, at kids asleep on piles of coats, at parents holding hands because they were terrified to let go. Read just the ones who showed up, he said. That afternoon, the detective from the truck case found Marcus near the exit and handed him a thin folder. Charges filed, he said. ETH farm. The mill. The highway. All connected. Read done. Marcus took the folder and did not open it right away. Good, he said. Keep it that way. The detective hesitated. You could have stayed quiet, he said. Marcus looked at the gym and the people sleeping. Equiet doesna t help a kid at the door, he replied. 2 days later, when the water finally receded, someone painted the clubhouse door during the night. A crown. Under it, 3 words. The men who came. Marcus stared at it for a long time. Then he did something nobody expected. He left it. He did not scrub it off. That evening, Lena and her mother came by again. Lena held a small box in her hands like it was fragile. She opened it and showed Marcus a keychain shaped like a tiny helmet. On the back was engraved a single word. Home. Lena's mother said she had started volunteering at the shelter and that the town had offered her a job. She said she did not feel hunted anymore, and she said the nights were quieter now. Marcus nodded. Lena looked up at him. Are you still scary, she asked. A few riders chuckled, then stopped when Marcus raised a hand. Marcus thought about it. The right people, he said. Lena smiled, like that was exactly the answer she wanted. The next knock came just after midnight. A pregnant woman stood shivering beside the road with a stalled car and a dead phone. Marcus grabbed his keys and went without his vest. He drove her to the clinic, waited in the parking lot, and made sure she got inside. When he came back through town, the streets were quiet. The river was lower now. The lights were back on in most houses. Some windows still had boards and tape, but people were rebuilding. A motorcycle passed the diner, and someone inside raised a cup in a silent toast. Marcus did not wave. He did not need to. People still watched motorcycles roll through town, but now there was less fear and more relief, because the rumor had changed. The new rumor was simple. If you were in trouble and you had nowhere left to go, there was a door that opened. Not because the men behind it were saints, because they were not. They were simply the ones who showed up. And when the door opened in the middle of the night, you hoped it was them standing there, with engines cooling in the rain, ready to move. Waiting.